So it's got me as you, obviously, but it'll still allow you to get in, right?
Yeah, it is. There's two Charlie Halls.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just announce that I'm me under your deal. Okay. All right. See you in a little bit.
All right.
Bye.
See ya.
Now, is that you, Councilman Holmes?
I am here.
Great. All right. Thank you, sir. I believe we have, well, I don't believe we have several members of our development community with us, but today matter is dealing with our standard development fees that impact our city and also the development and our future growth. So it's a very important matter. It's one that's been discussed for several months now. So the object of today's meeting is to probably rehash a little bit for some of us, but to go over the proposals. A study was conducted and presented to council and also many members of the community. So in order to start today's meeting, I want to check to see, is Terry Houck on the line? And our consultant, David Hyder, are you on the line? Jerron? Randy, if you'll tell him who we're looking for. Give us just 1 second and let's see if we can, like to have Terry with us as we get started. my hope was that we will have Terry start with the overview, and then dig in a little bit deeper, maybe from the staff side and hear from the development side. And at the end of this meeting, we need to come up with guidance for our staff and policy to proceed. If anyone is going to speak inside the chambers here, please come up to the mic, introduce yourself. If you're listening in remotely and you speak in, please make sure to mention your name and who you might be representing as well.
Terry should be on.
Okay. Terry Houck, are you with us? Are you unmuted?
I am now. I'm here.
All right. Thanks. Do we know if David's going to join us?
David will not be joining us. No.
Will not.
No.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, let's get started, Terry. And if you will kind of go over the overview that you have presented to us, and we'll take that as the first step in the process of the meeting.
Well, it's I guess finance knows and council knows, we had Stantec make a presentation on system development fees. And out of the presentation, we come up with the summary of a recommendation of what we can charge based on our capacity and future CIP projects. It's based on a 10-year schedule. We presented that information to council, and it was decided that council would send it back to the finance committee to be discussed. And so that's sort of where we're at right now.
Okay. I believe also that what triggered the incorporation or bringing in Stantec for the study?
Our information, we asked around, and Stantec seemed to be the most qualified and available, have done several in the state. And we actually contacted a local city, and they highly recommend it.
But, and to take that a step further, I think the 2017 legislation required that a study be done in order to implement system development fees. What we presently have now are frontage fees and acreage fees, and they're not backed up by any study. So in order to bring us into compliance with the 2017 legislation, we had to go out, and Terry just described the process of getting Stantec.
And in the information that was presented, as he said, that the city currently, uses that methodology. And I'm sure that it'll be brought up or maybe repeated that they presented us with three methodologies by which to approach this. One was a buy-in method, one was an incremental cost method, and then there was a combined method by which they are making their recommendations. There was tons of information in the report, lots of comparisons to cities equal in size, nearby and in the state, and also, spread out through the state. So lots of benchmarking, lots of pieces to consider. But we obviously, at this point, because of the legislation and because of what's presented to us, are going to have to make some changes, not in only the method in which we have been operating, but also in the percentages or dollars with which we're looking to to present and, or to come up with, and also remain competitive and keep ourselves in good stead, as I said earlier, with our developers and real estate arenas, which are very, very critical to the city and its future growth. So with that being said, is there anything else that anyone from staff or Terry you would like to add at this point?
I would just like to add that the study, we're competitive with two local entities, Greensboro and Winston-Salem. So we are in the range at the recommended amount. You are correct. We do need to move to system development fees and get away from frontage and acreage fees. There's been a lot, we've done a lot of study, and the numbers we have, we feel very confident about. But you know, the decision on what to charge will be up to the council. Primarily more important to public services in the city is that we move into system development fees.
All right, stay with us, Terry. I know.
Chairman Moore,
Yes.
and the committee, this is Jim Girdich with Blue Ridge Companies. And I just have one question. Terry just mentioned that he said we can change. Could you explain the rationale behind the statement can change?
I'm not sure what the question is when you say can change.
Yeah, or
We need-
can charge, excuse me, can charge,
Can charge.
correct.
Yeah. Ultimately, council will make a decision on the fees, if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, when you were talking, Terry, you said, you know, that you gave an explanation and you said that we can charge. And I just wonder
Yeah.
what the basis of the can is.
It's based on the 10-year CIP and the capacity available.
Okay, thanks.
And, you know, what we're recommending is what, like a better term, the max that we're recommending.
Based on 10-year what?
A 10-year CIP plan, which is, you can do anywhere from 5 to 20. 20 goes too far out. The norm is 10 years, and we stuck with the norm.
I can't understand anything. I
It's
cannot
hard. It's
understand.
difficult.
Let me move in closer to the mic. The norm is a 10-year stay for system development fees. And the study come out with a recommendation of what we could charge, which makes us competitive with two local entities. The decision on what to charge is a council decision. We can only make a recommendation. Again, primarily it's more important to public service in the city is that we adopt system development fees in some format and get away from frontage and acreage fees. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Terry, this is Councilman Holmes.
Yes, sir.
So the adoption of the system development fees were calculated, the percentages or levels of the system development fees were calculated how? How did you?
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying, what was the calculations that you guys used to come up with the fee percentages that we have right now?
We looked at, again, we technically, we almost have a 20-year CIP. Really, we looked at the 10-year, and it's based on what is capacity, what derives to give capacity to give you your base charge.
Mhm.
And that's how you calculate your fee per meter or whatever. And then you use the AWWA standards to calculate the multiplier based on the size of the meter. And that's what we used.
Okay. And so those numbers were consistent with High Point CIP and what needed to be to move away from the current fee structure?
Yes, sir, it is. It's what's projected. You have a lot of, for lack of a better term, some big expansion projects coming up in the near future. Some 30 million or better. And, that's a lot of money out there.
So these levels are taking into account any potential dips or hiccups in revenues, and so this was just not an arbitrary number that you guys arrived at that you thought would be good. You guys, this was done based on analysis of the needs of the city. Based
on the CIP, what is projected, what we're projecting to have to expand or upgrade, also expansion of the Piedmont Tri-Regional Water Authority, the next phase, and the transmission lines that have to get those lines to us, to increase our capacity.
One more question. Normally, what is the when engaging the development community, what is normally the process if there's any change in fee structures or any regulatory changes that come down? What is normally the process in terms of how we relay those changes to our development community?
Well, typically, prior to COVID, there was, I think, I may be wrong, I think there was like a quarterly TREVIC meeting. Mm-hmm. And at that time, we bring it up, and I can't remember exactly when we first called up the SDF, but it was a couple of years ago that we were looking to move in this direction.
Okay. Was the development community aware of the 2017 legislation change? I mean, I know they probably have people within their organizations that keep track of changes in laws. I'm just trying to see how it seems to appear that there's some type of disconnect between the understanding of the levying of system development fees here with our development community. So I'm just trying to close the loop if there's any misunderstanding about why these changes are being implemented.
I don't know that. I'm assuming they did know about the 2017 regulations because prior to that there were some issues with
Yeah. Is that all, Mr. Holmes?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Did I answer your question?
I'm sorry?
Did I answer?
You did. Thank you, Terry.
All right, thank you, sir. I heard somebody in the background, so I quit talking.
Now, that's part of this remote world we're living in right now. Judy Starter has stepped to the podium. I think she may have a few responses for you, Councilman Holmes.
Hey, this is Judy Stalder, 115 South Westgate Drive in Greensboro, representing TREVIC, Triad Real Estate and Building Industry Coalition. I want to thank you, Councilman Moore, for having us today and allowing us to speak. I want to clear up a few things that I heard just now. We do want system development fees. We're fine with the city changing from the way they charge water and sewer fees now with frontage and acreage fees to the system development fees because we feel it's a more fair way to charge that with the frontage and the acreage fees. Sometimes it feels like you're getting double charged, and oftentimes you're building in front of somebody else and then end up having to never get reimbursed for the extension of lines. And we just feel like this is a more fair way to charge those fees. So we're fine with changing to that model. Okay. When Terry said the system development fees were calculated for what they can charge, I'm pretty sure that what he meant was this is the maximum you can charge based on your system and how it was calculated. That doesn't necessarily mean that's how much you have to charge. For instance, when Greensboro did their fees, They remained revenue neutral. So when they changed their fees from a capacity use fee, which really was not legal, to system development fees, they made sure that the same development, an apartment development that was developed under their old fee structure, paid the same amount after they changed to the system development fee model. So there was no immediate increase in fees. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware that there doesn't have to be an immediate increase in fees just because you can charge those fees. Which brings us to the question of what is the justification for increasing the fees so dramatically? I mean, I know it's just proposed as that, but that is a question that I've been asked by our members, is where are the numbers that say this is what we need? Not necessarily this is what we can charge, but this is what we need. And then my second question, and I'd like it to be considered at the same time, is if you are reaching out to the stakeholders, has anybody called the High Point builders? Because the builders ultimately will be the ones paying this fee. And we don't have any of the High Point Builders Association members in Trevick. So we're just part of the stakeholder group.
I don't know.
Mr.
Randy?
Chairman, if I could answer one of Judy's questions.
Sure.
She asked what was the justification for raising the fee structure. We have the CIP that this whole study was based on. The CIP for the next 5 years reflects $150 million in system upgrades. So that's what the fee is based on. And right now, these fees, the acreage fees, the meter fees that we are collecting, produce less than 1% of the total revenues for that department, for water and sewer. The bulk, all of those, the rest of it is the maintenance of the existing system, the operation of the existing system, and the future expansion of the system is paid for by users' fees, the users every month based on their consumption. So that's the basis for the recommendation of the fee structure.
So I'm sorry.
I have two questions, one for you and one for Terry, if I may, Chairman.
Sure. Tell them who you are.
For Terry, I'm just curious. I know that you mentioned comparable to Winston-Salem, but did we also put in those comps the property value differences between some of those other cities and our property value to look at that percentage as well?
We did not, yes.
Okay.
We
And
are-
my question for
we don't
you,
look at the CIP. Go ahead.
I mean, how could I would think you could see what the percentage of property values, or find out what property values are going for in Winston, and then see what property values are in High Point.
But that has no bearing on the future capital needs of the system.
I know, but that means that they can bear that extra expense, whereas our market may not be able to.
Well, we don't have a lot of choice. These
Okay.
are projects that pretty much have to happen in the next 5 years. So you've got two sources of revenue right now. One is the existing users of the system paying their monthly water bills. And the other is the new users of the system. And that is the new construction that's going to take place. And that's where these fees come into account. So the balloon's only so big. When you squeeze on one end, it goes to the other. So
Okay. And then my second question for Judy is, do you feel like, that we're all on the modem of going forward and progress and economic development? Do you feel from the builder side that this increase will affect our economic growth in High Point and our development growth?
Well, unfortunately, it will. Most of the builders that build in High Point, particularly the larger projects, also build in other parts of Guilford County, Winston-Salem, and some even in the Triangle. So your smaller local builders may still be here, and trying to figure out how to make this work because, and I'll get to this in a minute because of the property value question that you asked. But when you take properties that appraise for 10% more, the same property, same house will appraise for 10% more in Greensboro, Winston-Salem. Where does it make sense to build that house? Do you build it where it's going to cost you more and it's going to appraise for less? Or do you build it for where you can build it for more? I'm not saying that our people don't want to build in High Point. High Point's got a very exciting future and we want to build here. What I'm saying is we need to think about how we implement these fees and figure out a way to do it so that it doesn't affect development going forward in the future.
Judy, you go ahead and finish.
I had a couple of other things I wanted to say. And just as Randy said, if you squeeze at one end, it's got to go somewhere else. So it's the same thing on this side. So it's a matter of balancing it, public and private. And you've just got to decide where the new construction is going to be because the development pressures are there. We looked at the numbers, although the base fee is comparable to Greensboro and Winston. And by comparable, I'm saying that kind of loosely because theirs aren't higher, they're lower. And Greensboro gives a discount for high density development. It's not directly in the system development fees, but it's figured in later by ordinance. Actually, to do these fees in High Point adds $3,200 to the cost of a single family dwelling. And that's approximately $1,100 more than is added in Winston or Greensboro. And these are kind of rough numbers. We blended those together, but it's going to cost less to build the house in Greensboro or Winston, where the system development fees are concerned. And we just want to make it fair. So I sent out a spreadsheet that shows the difference in the fees for Greensboro and the proposed High Point and the Winston-Salem. I think I've sent that to all of you, but would you like a copy now?
Yes, please.
Chairman Moore, this is Councilman Jefferson. I'm hoping I can get a chance to ask a couple of questions.
Sure. Thank you, Councilman Jefferson. Give us just a minute. I'll certainly get to you. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. These numbers were not done by me. The Greensboro numbers were done by Christine Williams in their Water and Sewer Department, their Water Resources Department, and the Winston-Salem numbers were done by the Winston-Salem people. So I think the start figure is the difference between what we have now and what's proposed. And for a developer that starts planning a development 2 years before they actually put something in the ground, that's a pretty big bite to take out of right in the beginning.
Okay. Judy, according to Stantec's proposal that was presented to all of us, and I'm sure you had a part of knowing about it. It looks to me like with our combined proposed residential water and sewer comparisons on a 3/4 inch meter, that we're going to hit right slap in the middle between Greensboro and Winston-Salem.
Maybe, but Greensboro gives an additional discount on apartments.
Okay, well, maybe that's something we could, we can look at that piece as well.
Right, and the other thing is Greensboro did not make a giant leap
Okay.
from one fee to another.
Well,
That's just something that we can't.
And I can agree with that. And there'll be a recommendation I make later that hopefully will take care of that part. But I think if I understand correctly, system development fees have been around since the mid to late 90s in their kind of forms. And we had
Capacity use fees have been around for a long time. And after a series of legal challenges, the state created the statute in 2017 to standardize it into system development fees. So we are aware of that.
Sure. Well, I think it's important to note on behalf of the city that none of us sitting on council, I think, I think there was there was an increase of whatever their names was in 99. Then it jumped almost 19 years to 2018. So we've got almost 2 decades spans in there that unfortunately we didn't adjust fees when we should have. So the other comment that I had was that as far as, and trust me, I'm in real estate. I don't like this, but we are where we are and we can't outsource it, unfortunately, like we've done a whole lot of other stuff. This is something we got to hit square on. So I get your point about the maximum and, but the builders, I'm a little bit confused as to why the bigger builders would feel like High Point is not necessarily going to be as viable a market if the fees go up and put us into the same area of where they're currently developing in the rest of the triad.
Right now, as proposed, the fees increase the price of the house by about $3,200.
Right.
In Winston and Greensboro, that's about $1,100 more than Winston and Greensboro based on how they're calculated. I don't know what the Greensboro has some, besides the discount for the density and apartments. They also have a discount for smaller houses, are not required to pay them. It's figured differently in Greensboro so that the prices aren't as high. The other thing is, I don't know why we would think we could be competitive and be higher and still be competitive with these other cities. Everybody wants you to build everywhere. I think you can talk to any developer and they will tell you that Greensboro is calling them on the phone every day to see what they can do in their town. I don't know that there's anybody in High Point that does that same kind of outreach to developers. But Greensboro is calling them. Winston doesn't have to. Winston's gotten to the point that they can expect developers to come, more like Raleigh and Charlotte. Okay. When you build your infrastructure and you get it going, and High Point's getting there. High Point's working on that, and we applaud you for that. But until you are there, you can very easily price yourself back out of the market.
Well, that's certainly something we don't want to do or intend to do. But the objective for us is to make the best decisions that will make High Point be the best High Point it could be. If I thought that greatly about Winston or Greensboro, I'd move there. With due respect.
Yeah, well, and some people do. I'm just presenting our competitors that are out there because they are out there. Greensboro wants business.
Judy, who is it with Greensboro that's making these calls to the developers?
The community development department, or neighborhood development, I think it's called, reaches out to developers. Some of the planners will reach out if they notice a piece of property that has had a couple of rezoning attempts on it and it hasn't worked out. And then there are realtors. The realtors are reaching out as well. And I'm sure we have that in High Point, just not we're a much smaller city.
Yeah.
We're a city, we're a great city. I live in High Point, but we're much smaller city and we don't have the same things to offer yet.
Yeah.
Councilman Jefferson, are you still with us? You have the floor.
Yes, sir. Chairman Moore, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's here helping us out, trying to figure this whole thing out. To the point said earlier about the ballooning, I want to ask a question about that, but I do want to highlight, Judy, we appreciate you and the information that you shared, but I have to ensure that it's known in this meeting and reflected in the minutes that we have a staff who does what I think is an incredible job of attracting the builders and having folks come in. We know that those folks, and I'm certainly not saying that that's what you were saying, that they don't do a great job, but I feel like I'd be remiss that in the midst of us having this conversation, that we don't make it known that everyone is fighting, and High Point's seen, I think, some considerable growth for that reason. The next point that I'll get to is that Manager McCaslin mentioned the ballooning that sort of takes place, that as you squeeze on one end, it's going to be impacted on the other end. I guess I'd like to ask this question to staff, and then I'm assuming it's going to lead to more conversation that will include others in the room. But if we don't increase the system development fees, let's just say for sake of conversation, we didn't increase it at all, and we're looking at keeping them and holding the line here for the next foreseeable future. I know we use it in the metaphoric terms to talk about the squeezing the balloon, but can we be clear about the ramifications of what that might mean for High Point's everyday residents, for those out there, the average person who's got their home and, you know, they're working hard to make it through this current pandemic and economic crisis? Can we make clear for them that if we sort of held the line, did not increase these fees whatsoever, what the potential ramifications could mean for the everyday average High Pointer?
$1,500 a person.
Go ahead, Randy.
I'm not sure where that figure came from, but if you kept these fees at the same level, producing the same amount of revenue, as I said earlier, you're looking at a total of less than 1% of all the revenues generated by the Water and Sewer Department. And as I said earlier, we have about $150 million on our CIP scheduled work for the next 5 years. Each year, as part of our budget process, we have a consulting group, financial group out of, I believe, Richmond, Virginia, Davenport and Associates, to look at our water and sewer operations. And based on the CIP, based on our debt, based on projects that we've got, they make a recommendation each year that we bring to you on water and sewer rate increases. And for the last, 10 years at least, those figures have been in the neighborhood of 4 to 6% a year. So our current users are seeing their water and sewer rates, based on the usage that they have every month, go up at a rate of 4 to 6% a year. That's what we're talking about. So if you would go with the full recommendation here, that we're not arguing that it will increase the revenue. That revenue will increase up to what percent of the total budget, I couldn't tell you right now. It all depends on the projects that come forth. But if you leave the revenue right where it is, then I think you can expect to see the 4 to 6% a year rate increases probably go up higher because of the substantial capital cost of projects that you have over the next 5 years. And again, I say that's expansion of the current. The current users don't need that expansion.
Right.
It's the new users that are going to be needing that expansion, and that's that's a policy decision that this council has to make. If you choose leaving it where it is, or if you go to 100% or somewhere in between, that's a policy decision. And then those figures that revenue will be put into the system by Davenport and them and company. And the new recommendation will come back on what the annual rate increases are for the water and sewer system.
And while we're on that point, Mr. Manager, I think it's a point of note that based on the legislation that when this is adopted, it's set for 5 years, and it can be changed, but that will trigger another study by Stantec or someone similar to do the in-depth analysis. It's not just something that we can change or implement over time. And that's not by our choice. That's by our understanding of the rules. Is that correct?
That is what our consultant has said. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So thank you, Manager McCaslin, and thank you, Chairman Moore, for adding that part on. And forgive me if this seems like an oversimplification, but it's either we have the folks who are potentially coming down the road, sort of paid to cover what they could come in and do, or we have the folks who are already here pay for the new folks who will come in. And I know that's probably a gross oversimplification, but that's kind of how I heard it. I think that if I'm thinking through this, the max fees, there's the maximum that we're looking at, and there's the stay where we're at that we're looking at. And then there's all, a lot of what could be in between, which we'd have to figure out. I think that Chairman Moore was onto something when he said that perhaps there's some other creative things that we could implement. I heard it mentioned that there's something that Greensboro does with their higher density to incentivize that there. And so maybe we can look at some of those things. It sounds like we're going to be somewhere between 0 and 100. I do think that it needs to be clear to everyone on council and to the greater public who's listening that we have a responsibility to not only care about the development that needs to come and the developers who want to build, and ultimately developers who want to make money when they build. That's their incentive, is to build and make money off it, which there's no problem with that. Every person has that right. But we have to really consider that. But we also have to consider, again, the average High Pointer who's living and just wants to live in their sheltered home. And the 4 to 6% increase means that what that change happens per year is going to keep going up and up. And with the aggressive vision that we have for expansion here in our city, that can be pretty. That can be a little more than novel, I think, as far as impact on some of our average High Pointers. And so I think that's something we have to figure out. I'm somewhere between the 0 and 100. I think there's things we need to negotiate to look even closer at the numbers so that we can ensure that those who are coming to play, if you have to pay to play to sort of come in, we get that everyone's got to pay to play. And we just need to be cognizant of our average High Pointers who, our great city is comprised of.
I'd like to respond to that.
Please.
I think it's very easy to say that we want to protect our current citizens, and I'm one of them, and I certainly want your protection and appreciate it. But I think you also need to consider that the new people, the new houses that are being built are also being built for High Point citizens, and you're just transferring that burden to them. I'm not saying that there's no need for expansion. There certainly is. That's the way the city's going to grow, and that's how we're going to increase our tax base and keep our fees and taxes down. But we also need to consider that everybody's High Point. It's not just the people that live downtown. It's North High Point, and it's the people that will be living in the new houses that'll be built. There are other cities that have found themselves in the same situation where fees weren't raised on a consistent basis for various reasons, because of recessions and because of a lack of or shortage of employees. There are all kinds of reasons They run the gambit of why fees aren't raised, and cities find themselves in that situation a lot. But I've seen some creative solutions to that, and it does require looking at all of your fees. I mean, y'all just raised development fees, and we knew that was coming and didn't say much about it because we knew. But it might be time to re-examine all fees across the city.
Sure.
And then come up with a way to implement this that is least damaging to the future growth you want to see. So in Greensboro, for example, they did that about 8 years ago. I'm not exactly sure, 7 or 8 years ago. And the fees that needed to be raised were significant across the board. And they decided to phase them in 25% a year over 4 years till they got to that number.
But
Now,
those weren't standard development.
Right.
fees.
I understand that you have to pay for calculations, but when you think about those, the amount of fees that you're charging, I mean, I don't know where it goes in the budget, but you get the cost of the calculations back from one development. I mean, the consultant is not that expensive. I mean, if you're charging one development $259,000, the cost of doing that calculation is not that high. But if you feel like you need to go less than that, fine. We're willing to talk about a number, but
Are you prepared with a number today?
Sure, I can come up with a number very quickly. But I want to say that the system development fee collection statute was changed last year. And the way fees can be collected are either at final plat or when a building permit is issued, whichever is later of those two. So it's the builders that are going to bear the brunt of this. We're going to sell a lot for somebody to build on, then they're going to come down to the city and the builders are going to have to pay that. And that's why I asked, had the High Point Building Association been included in any of these discussions?
And I think Terry's answer to that was no. Is that correct? Do I remember that correctly?
Do they have a representation that represents them?
Yes, the High Point Builders Association. Yes, and they have an executive officer. They come to, they tag on with TREBIC at any of our state programs. So they are aware of the legislation. I don't know if they're aware of what the city is proposing. It is what we're accustomed to in Guilford County, mainly because of TREBIC, that when new fees are proposed or new ordinances are proposed, a stakeholder meeting or group is assembled. And it's typically TREBIC, but not just TREBIC. It's TREBIC, it's financial institutions, it's builders, it's real estate professionals, it's all the people that might be involved. It's regular citizens that might have a say in that. And that is how it's usually done in High Point. I know that COVID is a great excuse not to get together. It's fine with me. I'm not a people person, but we still need to have everybody's input. I can tell you numbers that'll work for TREBIC, but I cannot tell you what the High Point builders are thinking or the real estate industry. And I'm sure they have some interest in new construction and the cost of new construction.
We got a couple of questions, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, Councilman Jones, go ahead.
Am I correct in saying that whatever we decide won't be implemented till October of this year?
That is up to you. That is our recommendation, that you delay the implementation of the fees until later this year. And October is generally when we increase water and sewer fees.
Okay. The other question is, based on the study results and what's been proposed to staff and us, Can that fee change at all over the 5-year period, even if it's preset today?
Not without, our understanding from our consultant is not without another study being undertaken.
Well, because I mean, I guess many of those building projects are already underway, and you know, the future ones in years 3, 4, and 5, they'll be able to build that into their pro formas and numbers and everything on what this development's going to cost and what the sell price or rent price or whatever would be. So my concern is not so much about years 3, 4, and 5, but years 1 and 2, about how that may affect projects currently underway. So that's why I was wondering if it could be adjusted. But as Judy said, that's not the amount of development we could expect. I think we could absorb that cost if we needed to do another study in a couple of years. Thank you.
Randy, this is Councilman Holmes. Could you clarify something? You said that the cost was projected for the CIP projects were projected on 5 years, and I think Terry said 10 years. Could you clarify if it's 5 or 10
Michael,
projects that we have? Mm-hmm.
The study was based on 10-year CIP. But what I'm saying is we normally operate in our budget with a 5-year CIP, and just the 5-year is 150 million. I don't know what the 10-year CIP is.
Okay, thank you.
Please step up and introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you. My name is David Michaels. I'm with Windsor Homes. We're active here in High Point for many years and a number of projects going on. And that was really one of my concerns, Randy, as you were just talking, is the calculation, does it become more favorable or lower if you look at the different time periods? These are long-term projects we're talking about, you know, a long lifespan. And I know that they're financed, you know, with a lot of debt. That does affect the calculation. But if you look at a 5-year window and these fees are going to be locked in for 5 years, is that a more favorable rate to the development community, the builder community, than if you look at a 10-year window, or I think a 20-year window was even mentioned by Terry earlier. And I haven't looked at, you know, how that does affect the calculation, but if that's the window that you're looking at for having the fees in place, I mean, we're looking obviously for the most favorable, slowest impact to our projects that we have underway and forthcoming. And we do hope to continue to do many things in High Point. It's a good location and a good demand, but we wanted to be competitive. And so I don't know if there's a methodology there that is more favorable in this calculation.
And I can't answer that question either. I don't know. I'm sure there's many ways to run the numbers. But as our consultant ran these based on a 10-year CIP, and that is just the cost of, or the projects that are scheduled during that time. You are correct. We finance, especially some of the larger projects, on 25-year bonds, 25-year
Right.
bonds. So they're looking at the cost spread over at a number of times. But even at the max of what was recommended for the development fees, it's not going to come anywhere close to generating the revenue.
I understand. We're not coming up with $150 million out of these fees. No way.
It's not going to cover that cost.
I understand that.
So and as I've said to each member on council, this is a policy decision.
Right.
You know, we have to have them to adopt some form of system development fee. We've got to get away from the acreage and front fees because they're not defensible. So we've got to have that. And between a break-even policy and the amount recommended by the consultant, somewhere in between, or at either one of those or somewhere in between, that's the policy decision that
Right.
council's got.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If there's a way to look at how that calculation based on the timing of that window, then that may be something that would help this situation. And I do think that this is a more equitable way versus the frontage and acreage fees where you're going on more of a density calculation, because the last two deals that we basically looked at had a fairly long sewer outfall running through it. And one of them, we just tied into it at one point. We had absolutely no ability to use any part of that line other than just making a connection. Now, another one we're looking at now that council just approved in early December, we probably will be able to use multiple points on that line. And so that's, it's just random and the characteristics of the site that you happen to be dealing with. Right. So I think that is a better methodology. We just want to make it so that it is something that we can digest on a little bit more reasonable time frame. I know there was a long period of time between the fee increases, as you mentioned, Councilman Moore, but now we're coming right in with another one just a few years later. I've worked in and around High Point since the early 90s with Piedmont Center. I sent some comments to the council in response to this. And High Point's always been a great location to work and receptive to developers, and we appreciate that attitude. And like I said, we want to continue to be here. One of the reasons that Piedmont Center ended up in High Point, I can tell you, is because of the water and sewer policies that were in place at the time that made it very much of an incentive to annex that entire development into High Point versus the city of Greensboro. So, if that spirit and that attitude, prevails in High Point, then I think there's going to be a lot of good things to happen down the road. And we want to be a part of that. We just want to make sure that it's something that we can transition into the market with the pricing of, we do development and building. So it does become more of a builder fee the way it's structured, but it still affects us the same way. Just something that we can factor in as we build houses and try to sell those in the market, because you're going to have to get houses appraised. They're going to have to meet with the market conditions. And, this is an increase that is going to have to be absorbed in the market, and the market's got to respond to that. And the market's very good at picking and choosing, winners and where they want to be. So they will figure that out versus the other locations around you. So I think that's all I have.
Mr. Michael, thank you. And thank you for what you've done and hopefully continue to do in High Point. The study that I mentioned that came back that I wanted to ask you, as a developer and a builder in the triad of the cities in our sister cities, that kind of thing. There's a lot of ways to look at numbers. You can look at them like an accountant, or you can look at them like a finance guy, sure. Or, numbers can say a lot of different things. But it looks just from a numerical standpoint that the recommendation, and I'm not saying that's where we're going, but the recommendation of the max puts us in line dollar figure wise with Greensboro and Winston. And you build there. So I'm just trying to see if it's showing that we're going to all be right around $3,000 for a 3/4 meter. What's the difference?
Well, and if that's what it shows, that's what it shows. But it's an increase from where we have been.
Right.
And these fees are starting to be implemented all over the triad. I mean, we saw a huge increase in Burlington a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, where their fees were much more nominal and a huge bump. And so Greensboro, I think, has probably been maybe a little behind in getting theirs fully in place, or trying to stage it in a little bit more reasonably. So, we're going to look at a location first and what product we think we can sell in that location and what price we think we can sell that house for to get good absorption in the market. And sure. This is going to be a factor in that.
Right.
And, it makes High Point, I guess, a little less competitive than they have been.
Right.
But going forward, like I said, I think the market's going to figure
And who
out.
knows when the other cities around will have to look at their fees again and the other things. So it's a moving target, and I think everybody that's been part of this today can see there's a lot of pieces.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pieces, and a
Yeah.
lot to digest. So I appreciate.
I will say,
you.
too, I appreciate the dialogue. I really did the discussion on this. I will say that, many years ago, this was all sort of handled by Guilford County. Anytime a new site came in, and there were some opportunities to finance those fees on larger projects over a number of years. Piedmont Center was in that category where we knew what the total was, but we had a 5-year period with like an 8% rate, which was good rate back in the early 90s, not so much now, but there were opportunities to do a financing program with these sorts of fees. So maybe that's something to consider as well.
Is there anybody else need to say anything at this point, or feel like that there's some information that hasn't been touched on either remotely or in the room?
Councilman Moore, this is Jim Girdich.
Okay, go ahead, sir. And you're with?
Blue Ridge Companies.
Great, thank you.
I just have one question for Randy, just for a general understanding of, to help the development community. What percentage of the $150 million capital raise is targeted to come from the system development fees?
We don't have that answer, Jim. I wish our consultant was on the line, but he's not, and we'd have to get with him to get an answer on that.
Yeah, that would just help, explain to us or help us swallow a little easier, If we know what share, we're responsible for, what percentage.
Okay.
Randy, this is Terry. Can I ask a question?
I'm sorry, yeah, state your name again.
It's Terry Howe.
Oh, Terry, go ahead, yeah.
Can I ask a question? Because I didn't really understand the question that was asked. And it's Jim, I believe, was asking the question. I think he asked what percentage of SDFE were going to be applied to the CIP. Is that what I heard?
Well, my question, Terry, is, Randy's talking about $150 million worth of system upgrade. And so what percentage of that total capital raise is coming out of the increase in the system development fees?
And the development, we don't know what all's going to be developed in 5 years.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure. I may be oversimplifying, but the 150 million is what we projected, and it doesn't have anything to do with SDF. It's expansion that's going to happen. I'm not sure if you're saying how much revenue comes in would go to the project. I assume that's what you're asking, but I'm not positive. Yeah,
that's what I'm targeting. What's our share of contribution to this $150 million need?
That, I hate to be general about it, but that would be based on how much comes in. And I can't answer that question. And the other thing is that it's probably going to take a while to accumulate enough to apply to a project. Not that you can't, but I just don't have that number.
Yeah, I would think the consultant would have, some assumptions.
They could probably make an assumption, but
future development, and then so that's how he's getting. We're trying to figure out, how meter fees and sewer fees jump from, we're looking at Judy's chart, in Keystone at Penny Road from current $43,000 to proposed $450,000.
I don't have the printout in front of me. I'm working remotely. I'm assuming you're talking about it's based on how big the development is and based on the meter size. That's my assumption.
Yeah, well, this is just straight up, a 5/8 inch meter.
Right, for a house or something.
Yeah. The fees are for that one development are going from 43,000 to 450,000.
And we clearly understand, sir, that, you know, I guess for public services endpoint, we projected what is the max, Judy's right, what the max we can charge. And that's kind of what we recommend. What council decides is up to council. What's more important to public services is that we adopt the system of development fees, which I heard from Treebeck, but they agree. They don't have a problem with it.
Right. And this is just a general understanding question, you know, out of this grand total of $150 million, are we trying to come up on the development community with 25% of it or 75% of it?
That one I can't, I don't think it's going to be 75%.
Right.
I mean, I truly can't answer that. I mean, all I can say is, you know, even if we didn't go to system development fees, which, you know, public services thinks is the right way to do and the best way to do, is that regardless, there'll be $150 million worth of projects, whether it's paid for by the revenue of system development fees or what is currently there, frontage and acreage, and it's not, you know, it'll still be $150 million with project. And so I couldn't give you a percentage.
Hey, Jim, you mentioned that it would raise from our current amount of 43,266 up to 450,000. Well, in Greensboro, it would go to 542,000, and in Winston, it would go to 624,000. So that just shows you what kind of good bargain you're getting at the current rates.
Okay.
Councilman Moore, this is Scott Wallace with Keystone. I'd like to join in also, if I may.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Jim, did you get finished with your point for now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead, Mr. Wallace.
Yes, thanks for your time, and we very much appreciate the dialogue that the partnership that we have with City of High Point and Treebeck and the various real estate realtors and builders coalition, and we've got a really good partnership with High Point, and as we do with other cities, and we appreciate the brainstorming, if you will, or the can-do attitude to try to come up with a good solution to develop more capital for more capital projects. I just like what is very important to us in the current climate that we're in is that, you know, we've made a tremendous investment in High Point based on the current fees, and it, just as Jim kind of pointed out in this simple example, we made an investment decision and we made a capital purchase not only on this Keystone at Penny Road, but several other 100 acres in High Point based on the current pricing of water and sewer fees. So it's very important for us as we use those numbers to pro forma our projects that as we transition the fees, and we very much agree that the fees need to be increased, but we just would very much appreciate a system that would vest the rights that the projects that are already in process are invested in and whatnot as we transition, and we don't have such a shock to the pro forma and the investment. So I just wanted to once again, just thanks for working with us. Thanks for partnering with us. And it's unfortunate that we have this COVID because generally we've had really good partnering sessions to get these things worked out before it gets to the council. And we very much hope to restart that with this process as well.
Well, thank you for those words. And I want all of you in the development community to know that this council, and I'm certain that this staff, most of which live in High Point, are extremely thankful for your investments in this town. We want you to make a profit and a good living. It's going to take us all. That's one of the reasons that this council decided to take a step back to try and do that. And I agree with you, Mr. Wallace. If not for the current pandemic, we could all been in punching range of each other and had this meeting a month or two ago. But we will continue to work and to do that and try to come up with the best solution we can. Knowing that things can change and will change again. But we want prosperity for everybody involved. And as close to fairness as we can get. Judy, you were at the mic. Did you want to, you have something else to add or say?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Did Ms. Peters want to ask her question?
Well, the only thing I wanted to say is, and I don't know how accurate these numbers are, but I'm pretty sure that they're pretty accurate. And I guess a lot of the constituents that may be listening in don't know what we're looking at. But in most of these categories, we're looking at a 10 times increase. So we're not talking about 15% or 20, we're talking 10 times. So I just want them to be aware. And I don't really know how it got to that point. I don't know if it was prior councils not approving increases or staff not recommending increases. I don't know, but I hope that we can start becoming more due diligent on watching all the fees to make sure that they're very incremental so that you guys can handle them.
Well, I think that was an important point that Mr. Wallace made about vesting the approved projects that are already in High Point so that they can come in at the current fees that were figured into their developments. The second, I have a question now. As I was listening to everybody talk about how you have to recalculate fees, that may be true, but there's nothing that I'm aware of, and Mr. Houck may be able to confirm this, that says you can't adopt a fee and then give a discount to that fee. So say we agreed that 50% of what you can charge would be a fair fee. It'd still be very high, but if you vested the current projects and then gave a 50% discount the first couple of years, or first 2.5, if you want to say, talk about a 5-year plan, and then the full amount for the next 2.5 years, and then in 5 years recalculate. Everybody will have a fair chance at getting their developments done. And in 5 years, we'll be aware that this is coming, that you're going to recalculate, and it could be higher. It might not, but it would be based on real calculations and knowing what our questions are going to be about justification of charges and what percentage you expect us to be responsible for.
Well, I know it's a lot like the cost of goods in other businesses as well, and profit margins and, marketplaces and predictions and current situations. So, but it's just dealing on the development side. I'm sure that, nobody's going to, the price has got to be figured in somewhere. We're trying to figure out how we equitably squeeze the balloon, follow the current legislation out of Raleigh, and give staff a policy that can be workable. And I know staff's going to work with whatever council gives them. That's what they have to do. So that is the objective of where we're trying to get.
And I just want to point out that we are all in agreement on one part of that, and that is that system development fees are the way that model is acceptable.
Well, and that's good. I'm glad that we've got that piece. I think that the tougher part is the actual number, and into that is tied the elusive fairness word. So that's where we're trying to get to, and at some point soon, we need to determine that number as a council, and we need to give the resolution its time, and we need to move forward. Terry, are you still with us, Terry Houp?
I am, sir.
Did you hear Judy's last comment, and do you want to respond?
I think Judy said, and correct me if I'm wrong, Judy, you said that what I propose is the maximum, and you are correct. And that council could decide to charge less than that, if I'm paraphrasing correctly. You did say something about coming back in 2 years and increasing it a certain percentage. And our conversation with Stantec and with UNC Finance down in Chapel Hill, they're not sure we can do that without doing another study.
Terry, I don't think you understood what I said.
Okay.
Because what I said was to choose a number, and I'm saying go up half of what you want to go, and then give a discount for the first 2.5 years. Obviously, Greensboro figured out a way to give discounts on multifamily and on smaller homes. So you could adopt the fee. There would be no need to recalculate it. Just give a discount on that fee for the first 2.5 years.
Okay, I understand that, yeah.
Now, is there any reason we couldn't do that?
I wouldn't be generating the revenues that we need.
I wouldn't generate the revenue, but that's a council decision.
Was Greensboro going up at the time on their current water and sewer rates at 4 or 5% a year?
I'm not sure what I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, but yeah, they just didn't change their fees overall. It worked out. It wasn't exactly the same, but they just didn't. They got as close to what was the same as they could.
All right.
But they were able to work in discounts into their fee. So they adopted the system development fee and still give a discount for multifamily and for smaller homes.
Define smaller home.
I think the way they define it is under 1,200 square feet.
I can ask another question.
Sure, go
Simple
ahead,
question.
Councilman.
Simple question, but Randy, in this thing we've got here, looking at we'll take Keystone at Penny Road. If the proposed is $450,000, is that pretty much, to simplify, is that pretty much the full actual cost of the water and sewer improvements would be in this example would be the $450,000?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Judy, but my understanding, the 450,000 would be based on the number of meters that they purchased. So the number of units.
So if we didn't implement and change anything, the citizens of High Point would be paying $400,000 portion of that versus the proposed is the developer pretty much covering all that cost.
I'm not sure that you can draw that kind of parallel to it. These system development fees, even if you implemented it at the 100%,
right,
is still going to be a small percentage of the total revenue in the whole fund. Right now, it's generating less than 1%.
Right.
So if you went up, sure, you might get up to 2 or 3 or 4%, but you're not going to get. So I don't know that you could draw that parallel between the citizens, what they're currently paying and what the new system fees would be.
Okay.
And I think you should always also keep in mind that it's not just, the city does some expansion, of course, but the developers doing expansion as well. They're building outfalls across their property, in some cases outfalls that they can't even use to another property so that it can be extended if that particular property develops next. So it's not like the city's going in there and building the water and sewer lines or even reimbursing like you used to do back in the 80s. The developer goes in and builds every bit of the infrastructure that he needs for that particular development.
Anybody else have any comments at this point or question? Well, seeing how, this is my feeling. A lot has been brought forward today. Council has had the development study. There's many moving parts and a few things that have been added. I am not one that likes long, drawn out, kick things down the road kind of person. With that being said, I'm going to make a recommendation that we keep this item in Finance Committee with the intention of addressing a couple of notes that I have, a couple of questions that I have, and that at the next meeting of the Finance Committee, we will come to a final decision on where these numbers are going to fall and what the actual resolution is going to say. Is there any comments or discussions about that?
No, I just want to say that thank you to everyone that showed up, and thank you those that are in remotely. I do think that having this meeting structured, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for putting this all together, that I feel better having your input, your feedback, because I don't do what you do for a living. And so I have to rely on your input to make this tough decision.
Anybody else? I do want to thank everybody for their time and for their interest in a very important piece of High Point's current position and our future. I want the message clear, and I think it is. I know y'all want the best processes and the best environment that you can enter and competitively build. The comparisons can get difficult when different cities are in different stages of their development and their current infrastructure and their current needs and the things that go on there. So I have no doubt that we will come to an answer very soon, and that we will make it as equitable as we can, but it is going to be one that we have to make, and we need to get this done and get it behind us. Please feel free to reach out to me, or I'm sure the others, if you have another comment or a question, but I will be working diligently on this with the other members and staff and anybody else that comes back in to participate. But we need to get this put behind us and keep building and moving forward. So if there's nothing else to come before finance, I'm going to leave this in committee and this meeting will be adjourned.
We still don't have our standard Finance Committee before next council, correct?
But again?
Yeah, okay, good.
Mr. Chairman, this is Councilman Holmes.
Yep.
The motion that you made, do we have to vote on that? Do we need to take a vote, or is that
Recommendation, not a motion. We're not taking action, so
Since we're leaving it where it is, we do not have to vote, Councilman Holmes.
all right? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On my notes, I am supposed to take a vote on adjournment. Is there anyone opposed to adjourning? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.